Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm working on this little painting of a snow leopard that I turned into a little bit more of a fantastical version of herself. I loved working on this one and thinking about new unique ways to actually portray that. And I got a lot of great ideas from watching a class over on Skillshare, and they are actually the sponsor of this video. I do want to give a huge thank you to them. They have been so supportive and helpful for me to be able to do my art and to do more videos on this channel. But they are an amazing online learning community where you can find tens of thousands of classes all based on different creative endeavors like fine art, illustration, graphic design. And I love being able to go over there to get an infusion of new ideas, especially when I'm feeling like I'm in a little bit of a rut and I just want to go and find something new. And they do have annual subscriptions that do come to less than $10 a month. And I do have that code down in the description that'll give you 2 months to check it out, see if you like it. That's for the first 500 people who use that code, so make sure you jump on that if you want the opportunity to go see if it works for you. I actually really love being able to learn in that kind of environment. The way that the classes are presented over on Skillshare does really work for me, but like always, I like to go and watch a specific class, and the one that I chose was Modern Botanical Folk Art from Peggy Dean. And I have been really wanting to spread my horizon as far as types of art that I consume and get inspiration from. So I thought that this one was a perfect one for me to go watch and figure out and then find a way to bring it into my own style. So I have really been feeling like I tend to look at, and I think we're all like this, we tend to look at very specific types of art, the art that we really like, art that looks like our own art. And I've been feeling the bug to go and look at artwork from other cultures, different mediums, different techniques that other artists choose to use in their work, and then finding ways to let that inspire my own work that might be radically different but still has that little spark of differentness from how I normally work. So I thought this was really an exciting little first step to going and figuring that out and learning it. But like always, I like to take what I learn and then really just manipulate it into something that makes me really excited. And for me, I loved learning about the different forms that folk art can take in this specific reference of how she's talking about it and how it can be used as design like that. And I was thinking, well, what can I illustrate that would show that kind of shape language and line language and have that meaning behind it a little bit, but still have it be a type of art that I would be really excited about painting. And I think that's really the big thing for me moving forward with trying to find inspiration in more unlikely of places, is that I just need to find that little moment of inspiration and then apply it to something that I am really passionate about and excited about, and then it becomes this perfect marriage of something new, something I'm used to, something I love, and something new. Anyways, so I took what I had learned from that class, and then I decided to apply it to a snow leopard. I love snow leopards. I love almost every animal actually, but I was looking at tons and tons of photo references of snow leopards, and they have these really beautiful spots on their faces. And I decided that I wanted to take that into a little bit more of a fantastical realm where I could take what I learned from this class about forming these folk art shapes and then applying that to the spots on the face of a snow leopard and then seeing where it would go. So in the end, it ends up almost like this marriage between the stripes of a tiger and the spots on a snow leopard, but it was really eye-opening and fun to be able to look for those different connections between where there's normally dark spots on the face of a snow leopard, and then how can I connect it in a way that it still feels mostly true to the original source, but then also does push it a little bit more into something that's a little bit more unique to this piece. And one of the things that I found the most inspiring and I loved so much about the folk art that she was showing me and teaching me about in this class, and then the references that I looked up afterwards when I was looking for more to get inspired from, is how symmetrical it is. absolutely love symmetrical artwork. I always love painting figures, or animals in this case, straight on, because it has just so much impact and connection between the viewer and the figure or the animal in the piece. And I love that strength and that structure to it. It's really fun for me to be able to do that. So I knew right off the bat that studying these very symmetrical, sharp, clean designs, I wanted to make sure that I applied that to the face of a snow leopard that was looking directly at the viewer, so that way it would just really epitomize that symmetricality of the spots and the lines that I was creating to make this snow leopard. And it was kind of hard to work on this piece up to the point where I was able to go in and add the spots and the stripes and the really dark areas and the eyes, because it was so pale. And I wanted it to be that way. The snow leopard is a very light animal, but because so much of the contrast and definition came from all of those elements that I would be adding with this very dark paint, I had to totally put it off until I was done with that base layer below it and I got all those shadows in correctly, because if I added the really dark Payne's gray was what I based it on, but that really dark paint down for all those areas, and then I needed to paint up against it, it could easily bleed into areas that needed to stay an almost white. So yeah, that was that was a little bit of a stretch for me to be able to work in a way that normally I would just want to jump right in and start putting down those darker areas. I held off, and I tried to make sure that I remembered that once I added those, this piece would turn more into what I had in my head, and it would bring it closer to that first picture that I had of it. But that happens a lot with watercolors, where I do feel like, oh, it's just not looking quite right, I can't figure it out, except for this time I did know exactly why, and it was helpful to see that in this case and to be able to apply that into the future when I'm working on pieces. And I have to remember that some areas just have to be put off until later, and it's okay for it to not look finished until I get all those elements down. And painting the stripes and the spots, I knew for the most part I did want it to be very bold and rich and dark. But I did also want just a little bit of softness as it receded into the background. So the parts on the top of the snow leopard's head, I let it get a little bit lighter. There were a few spots towards the eyes that I actually did that and then changed my mind because I wanted anything near the eyes to have that really strong contrast. But I also really pushed that for the areas that were not on the face. That way it had that separation, so that it did look like it was farther away and that there might be like almost fog in the atmosphere, so that it does fade away a little bit. So for the background areas, or the background areas of the snow leopard, so the tail and the body, I did do a wash of a really light blue that made the body darker, and then I also did the stripes a lighter gray so that there's just less contrast. And as things get farther away, there is less contrast and things actually do end up looking a little bit bluer, so that does help the eye see a little bit more depth in a piece like this, even though there's not a lot of elements going on. And I think it's been a little while since I've talked about how much I love Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray is such a beautiful paint to work with. It's so dark, but also cool colored, so it has a lot of life and interest to it, rather than it being just like a straight black paint or a gray paint. It does add a lot more interest when you're looking at it, and it turns into a really beautiful wash when you add a lot of water to it. But then in applications like this, where I'm painting the stripes on the face, I can get this really bold, almost black color with these watercolors, and it looks so good. I love Payne's Gray so much. It's definitely one of my all-time favorite paints to work with. And then finally, for the background, I mixed Lunar Blue from Daniel Smith, which I just got and I love it. It's extremely granulating. It has a lot of different pigments in it, and some that are really opaque, and it's just a really beautiful paint to be able to work with. And I did mix in a bit of Payne's Gray to it to give it just a little bit more darkness to it and harmony with the rest of the piece. And the very last step that I did, like always, I like to go in and add a few little white highlights and details. I added a couple little dots to the background, almost like it's just the very beginning of snowfall. I also added a couple of highlights to the snow leopard's eye But I think that that was about it. I was really tempted to put it on a few different other places, but I decided to let the highlights themselves be a little bit more minimal on this piece. And don't forget to check the link down below to take you to Skillshare, and you can get 2 months free to go see if you enjoy it. I certainly do, but I also have this original painting at my shop, so if you're interested, there's a link down in the description that'll take you over to my art shop. And that's about it for today, so I'll be back next week with another art video, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you then.